"Get on the ground! Now! I said get down!" The officer's scream shattered the quiet hum of the diner. A man in a hoodie held his hands up, calm, compliant, his eyes deadly serious. He wasn't scared. He was calculating. The officer, Brock Higgins, thought he was taking down a low-level thug. He thought he was cleaning up the streets. But he had no idea that the man he was shoving against the counter wasn't a criminal. He was the highest-ranking FBI field operative in the state, wiretapped and surrounded by a surveillance team watching every single move. 7 minutes later, Higgins's career wouldn't just be over. He would be wishing he'd never put on the badge. This is the story of how arrogance met the ultimate authority. It was 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in South Philadelphia. The rain was hammering against the grease-stained windows of Mickey's All-Day Breakfast, a joint that smelled of burnt bacon and stale cigarettes. It was the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be found. Sitting in booth 4, nursing a black coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago, was a man the locals knew as T-Bone. He wore a faded oversized hoodie, distressed jeans, and Timberlands that had seen better days. To the casual observer, he looked like just another guy trying to scrape a living on the corners of 4th and Girard. But his name wasn't T-Bone. It was Special Agent Terrell Bishop. Terrell was a legend at the Bureau. 15 years in organized crime, a law degree from Georgetown, and a closure rate that made other agents sweat. Today, however, he wasn't a lawyer or an agent. He was the bait. "Status," Terrell murmured, his lips barely moving. The microphone taped to his chest beneath the hoodie picked up the vibration. "We have visual," a voice crackled in his invisible earpiece. It was Special Agent Sarah O'Malley, stationed in a surveillance van 2 blocks over. "Target is 2 minutes out. Remember, Bishop, we need him to explicitly offer the weapons. Don't jump the gun." "I know the play, O'Malley," Terrell replied, his eyes scanning the street. He was waiting for Dante Ricci, a mid-level enforcer for the Moretti crime family. Ricci was paranoid, dangerous, and the key to a RICO case the FBI had been building for 3 years. If this meeting went south, 3 years of work would evaporate. Terrell adjusted his posture, slouching lower, transforming his body language from confident Fed to nervous street hustler. The bell above the door jingled. Terrell tensed, but it wasn't Ricci. 2 uniformed police officers swaggered in, shaking the rain off their heavy coats. The diner went silent. The waitress, a kindly older woman named Martha, froze while pouring coffee. Officer Brock Higgins was a man who took up too much space. He was broad-shouldered, red-faced, and had a reputation that preceded him. He was known in the precinct as a stats guy, someone who pumped up his arrest numbers by sweeping up anyone who looked at him wrong. Trailing behind him was Officer Jessica Klein, a rookie who looked like she was barely out of the academy. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the diner. "Just coffee, Brock?" Klein asked, her voice quiet. "Yeah, and maybe a little peace and quiet," Higgins grunted. He scanned the room, his gaze passing over the old man eating soup, the couple arguing in the corner, and landing squarely on Terrell. Terrell felt the weight of the stare. "Don't engage," he told himself. "Ricci is 1 minute out. If a squad car is parked out front, Ricci walks. If Ricci walks, the case dies." Terrell pulled his phone out, pretending to text. "O'Malley, we have a situation. 2 uniforms just walked in. Higgins, I know him. He's dirty." "Abort?" O'Malley asked, tension spiking in her voice. "No," Terrell whispered. "Ricci is too close. If I leave now, I look suspicious to Ricci. If I stay, I risk Higgins making a scene. I have to ride it out." Higgins didn't go to the counter. He walked straight toward booth 4. The heavy thud of his boots on the linoleum sounded like a countdown. "Feet off the seat," Higgins barked. Terrell didn't have his feet on the seat. He was sitting normally. He looked up, keeping his expression neutral. "Excuse me?" I said, "Don't get comfortable." Higgins sneered, his hand resting on his belt, dangerously close to his taser. "You buy something, or are you just loitering?" "I bought a coffee," Terrell said, gesturing to the cup. "Just waiting for a friend." "Friend?" Higgins laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Guys like you don't have friends in this neighborhood. You have accomplices. What's in the bag? There was a duffel bag under the table. It contained $50,000 in marked FBI cash, intended for the weapons buy. Laundry, Terrell lied smoothly. Laundry, Higgins repeated, looking back at Klein. He says it's laundry. You believe that, Klein? Klein shifted uncomfortably. Officer Higgins, maybe we should just get our coffees. Not yet, Higgins said, turning back to Terrell. His eyes narrowed. I think you fit the description of a suspect we're looking for. Robbery down on 8th Street. Tall, black male. Hoodie. Terrell sighed internally. It was the oldest trick in the book. A vague description that could fit half the city, used as probable cause to toss someone. I've been here for 30 minutes, Terrell said calmly. Ask the waitress. I haven't been on 8th Street. I'm asking you to stand up, Higgins commanded, his voice raising an octave. ID. Now. O'Malley, Terrell whispered, barely audible. Ricci is here. Through the window, Terrell saw a black Mercedes slow down. Dante Ricci was looking at the diner. He saw the squad car. He saw the uniform standing over Terrell. The Mercedes didn't stop. It accelerated and disappeared around the corner. The meat was burned. The case was compromised. Terrell felt a cold, hard anger settle in his stomach. He slowly stood up. You just made a mistake, officer. Is that a threat? Higgins unclipped his radio. We got a 1052, resisting, requesting backup. I'm not resisting, Terrell said, raising his hands slowly, palms open. But I am telling you, you are interfering with a federal operation. Higgins blinked, then burst out laughing. Federal operation? You? Look at you. You're a bum. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Listen to me, Terrell said, his voice dropping to that command tone he used in the interrogation room. My name is Special Agent Terrell Bishop. My badge is in my back pocket. If you touch me, you are assaulting a federal officer. Higgins hesitated for a split second. The confidence in Terrell's voice was jarring, but Higgins's ego was too big to reverse course in front of his rookie partner and the diner patrons. He had already committed. Yeah, and I'm the King of England, Higgins spat. He grabbed Terrell's wrist and twisted it violently behind his back. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the diner. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and impersonating an officer, Higgins announced, shoving Terrell toward the door. Terrell didn't fight back. He knew the surveillance team was recording everything. Audio. Video. Every word Higgins said was a nail in his own coffin. O'Malley, Terrell said clearly into the air, knowing the mic would pick it up. Let him take me in. Do not intervene yet. I want him to book me. I want the paper trail complete. Copy that, Bishop. O'Malley's voice came back, sounding furious. We are trailing the vehicle. The ASSC, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, is being notified. You hang tight. Higgins shoved Terrell out into the rain and slammed him against the hood of the cruiser. Who you talking to? You crazy or something? I'm talking to the people who are about to ruin your life, Terrell said, staring at his reflection in the wet metal. The ride to the 12th precinct was tense. Officer Klein was driving, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Terrell, who sat perfectly still in the back, staring out the window. Higgins, Klein whispered. He really didn't fight back. He was compliant. And that thing he said about being an agent... Shut up, Klein, Higgins snapped from the passenger seat. He was scrolling through his phone, looking bored. They all say stuff. I know the mayor. I'm a lawyer. I'm an agent. It's all noise. He's a street guy with a bag of cash he can't explain. We book him, we seize the cash, we get a commendation. But the bag, Klein pressed. If it is money, shouldn't we call it in? We'll count it at the station, Higgins said sharply. Don't be so by the book. This is the real world. Terrell listened, memorizing every word. He knew exactly what Higgins was planning. Civil asset forfeiture. They would seize the $50,000, claim it was drug money, and it would disappear into the precinct's discretionary fund. or Higgins' pocket. They pulled into the precinct sally port. The heavy steel doors rolled down behind them, sealing them in. Higgins yanked Terrell out of the car. "Welcome to the Hilton. Let's get you processed." They walked him through the bustling station. Phones were ringing, drunks were singing in the holding cells, and tired detectives were typing reports. Higgins paraded Terrell through the bullpen, a trophy on display. "What you got there, Brock?" shouted Sergeant Miller, a desk sergeant with a coffee stain on his tie. "Another wannabe tough guy?" Higgins laughed. "Claims he's FBI. Can you believe the nerve?" A few officers chuckled. Terrell remained silent. His eyes were scanning the room, noting the exits, the cameras, the chain of command. He needed to time this perfectly. They reached the booking desk. Higgins slammed the duffel bag onto the counter. He unzipped it. The sight of the stacked $100 bills silenced the room nearby. "Whoa," Sergeant Miller whistled. "That's a lot of cheddar." "Drug money," Higgins declared. "Found it on him. No explanation." "I told you the explanation," Terrell said calmly. "It is government property. Serial numbers are recorded." Higgins leaned into Terrell's face, his breath smelling of onions. "You don't have a badge, buddy. You don't have ID." "Check my back pocket," Terrell said. "Like I told you at the diner." Higgins smirked. He reached into Terrell's back pocket and pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open. The smile froze on his face. It wasn't a standard fake ID. It was a heavy, gold badge with the eagle crest. Next to it was a laminate card. United States Department of Justice. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Terrell Bishop. Higgins stared at it. He looked at the photo. Then at Terrell. The photo was younger, clean-shaven, but it was undeniably him. "Where'd you buy this?" Higgins scoffed, though his voice wavered slightly. "Canal Street? It's a good fake." "Run the badge number," Terrell challenged. 8940 Alpha. Run it through NCIC. Do it now." Sergeant Miller looked nervous. "Brock, maybe you should run it." "It's fake," Higgins shouted, slamming the wallet down. "He's playing you. He's trying to scare you." "I'm not trying to scare you," Terrell said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. "I'm giving you a chance to mitigate the damage. Right now, you are looking at kidnapping and obstruction of justice. If you put me in that cell, you add false imprisonment. If you touch that money, you add theft of federal property." Higgins's face turned a deep shade of crimson. He felt his authority slipping. The rookie, Klein, was backing away, looking terrified. "Put him in the cell," Higgins ordered the booking officer. "Brock, I don't know," the booking officer stammered. "I said put him in the holding cell," Higgins screamed, grabbing Terrell by the collar. At that moment, the phone at the sergeant's desk rang. It wasn't the normal ring. It was the red line, the direct line from the captain's office. Sergeant Miller picked it up. "Desk. Miller." He listened for 2 seconds. His face went pale. He stood up straight, his eyes locking onto Terrell. "Yes, sir. He's right here, sir." Miller swallowed hard. He held the phone out toward Higgins, but he was looking at Terrell with pure fear. "Higgins," Miller said, his voice trembling. "It's the captain. He wants to know why the special agent in charge of the FBI Philadelphia field office just called him screaming about an agent being held hostage." The room went deathly silent. Even the drunks in the cells seemed to stop making noise. Higgins looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. He looked at Terrell. Terrell smiled for the first time. It wasn't a nice smile. "Answer the phone, officer. Tell him what you found in my pocket." Officer Brock Higgins stood frozen, the phone receiver feeling like a lead weight in his hand. The captain's voice was audible even from a distance, a tinny, screaming stream of profanity that seemed to vibrate through the plastic. "Put him on!" Captain Henderson roared through the line. "Put Agent Bishop on the phone now, you imbecile, before the DOJ brings a tank through my front door." Higgins lowered the phone, his face a mask of stubborn denial. He looked at Sergeant Miller, then at the terrified rookie, Klein, and finally at Terrell Bishop. Terrell was leaning against the booking counter, still handcuffed, looking bored. "He's got to you too," Higgins muttered, shaking his head. "This guy is good. He tricked the captain." "Brock," Sergeant Miller said, his voice pleading. Give him the phone. Unlock the cuffs. This isn't a joke." "It's a trick," Higgins shouted, slamming the receiver down, cutting off the captain. "I know a perp when I see one. The badge is fake. The call is a spoof. We are processing him." Terrell sighed. "You just hung up on your captain. That's insubordination on top of the felony charges. You're really going for the high score." "Shut up." Higgins reached for his taser again. "Officer Higgins," Terrell said, his voice suddenly sharp, cutting through the humidity of the room. "Check the time." Higgins frowned. "What?" I said, "Check the time. It's been exactly 7 minutes since you put those cuffs on me." "So what?" Standard FBI extraction protocol for a compromised undercover agent in a hostile environment is 7 minutes, Terrell said calmly. "You might want to look out the window." Higgins scoffed. He walked over to the reinforced glass window that looked out onto the street. He expected to see rain, traffic, maybe a pedestrian or two. Instead, he saw a wall of black steel. 4 black Chevrolet Suburbans had mounted the curb, blocking the precinct's exit. Behind them, a mobile command center truck was idling, but it was what was happening on the sidewalk that stopped Higgins's heart. Men and women in full tactical gear, navy blue body armor with bold yellow letters reading FBI, were swarming the entrance. They moved with a fluid, terrifying precision that made the precinct's patrol officers look like mall security. They weren't knocking. They were stacking up. "What the hell?" Higgins whispered. Crash. The double doors of the precinct lobby flew open with such force they banged against the walls. "Federal agents, nobody move! Hands where we can see them!" The shout was unified, loud and absolute. Chaos erupted in the bullpen. Officers scrambled to stand up, spilling coffee, dropping paperwork. Some instinctively reached for their holsters, only to freeze when they saw the sheer number of carbines pointed at the ceiling. Leading the charge was a man in a sharp grey suit, wearing a windbreaker over it that said, FBI ESAC. He was tall, with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. This was Assistant Special Agent in Charge David Reynolds. Behind him were 12 members of the FBI SWAT team. "Who is the watch commander?" Reynolds barked, his voice echoing off the tile floors. Sergeant Miller raised a trembling hand. I am, sir." "Sergeant Miller." "Sergeant Miller," Reynolds said, stepping forward, his team fanning out to secure the room. "You have a federal agent in custody. His name is Bishop. I want him released immediately, and I want the officer who arrested him to step forward." Higgins turned from the window. He was pale, but his arrogance was a deep-rooted thing. He walked down the short hallway from the booking area to the bullpen, pushing past the gate. "I'm Officer Higgins," he announced, trying to puff out his chest. "And I don't care who you are. This is my precinct. You don't come in here waving guns around. That man is a suspect in a robbery investigation." Reynolds looked at Higgins with an expression of pure disgust. He didn't yell. He walked right up to Higgins, entering his personal space. "Officer Higgins," Reynolds said quietly, "you have exactly 3 seconds to hand me the keys to those handcuffs, or I will have you on the floor in front of your peers. 1. Higgins looked around. His fellow officers were looking down, stepping away from him. Even Klein had retreated to the far corner near the vending machines. He was alone. 2, Reynolds counted. Higgins reached into his belt with a shaking hand and pulled out the key ring. He slammed them into Reynolds's hand. "Fine, take your buddy. But I'm filing a formal complaint." Reynolds ignored him. He walked past Higgins to the booking desk where Terrell was waiting. Reynolds unlocked the cuffs. Terrell rubbed his wrists, grimacing. "You okay, Bishop?" Reynolds asked. "Shoulders a little stiff. He wrenched it pretty good," Terrell said, rotating his arm. "Did you secure the perimeter?" "Perimeter is secure. Ricci is in the wind, though. We lost him when the arrest went down," Reynolds said, clearly unhappy. "Not necessarily," Terrell said, looking at Higgins. "We might have lost the battle, but I think we just found a bigger war." Terrell turned to face Higgins. The dynamic in the room had shifted entirely. Terrell was no longer the suspect. He was the predator. "Officer Higgins," Terrell said, "I'm taking command of this booking area. We need to have a chat. In the box. Now." "You can't interrogate me," Higgins sputtered. I have union rights. I want my rep." "This isn't an administrative hearing, Brock," Terrell said, using his first name with chilling familiarity. "This is a federal criminal detainment. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Get him in the room." 2 SWAT agents grabbed Higgins by the arms. He didn't fight this time. He let them drag him into Interrogation Room 1, the same room where he had terrified countless suspects over the years. Interrogation Room 1 was a cold, windowless box with a steel table and 3 chairs. The mirror on the wall was one-way glass, and Higgins knew exactly who was behind it: Reynolds, the captain, and probably a federal prosecutor. Higgins sat on the far side of the table, his arms crossed. He was trying to look defiant, but his leg was bouncing nervously under the table. Terrell walked in. He had ditched the oversized hoodie. He was now wearing a Kevlar vest over his t-shirt, with his badge clipped to the front. He carried a thick file folder and a laptop. He sat down opposite Higgins and didn't say a word. He opened the laptop. He opened the file. He arranged 3 pens in a perfect line. The silence stretched for 2 minutes. It was an old cop trick. Make them wait, make them sweat. Higgins knew it, but it was working anyway. "You got nothing," Higgins finally blurted out. "I made a mistake on the ID." "So what? Qualified immunity. I acted in good faith." Terrell looked up, his eyes weary. "Good faith? Is that what you call it?" "He fit the description," Higgins insisted. "Tall, black male, hoodie. Robbery suspect." "Which robbery?" Terrell asked. The one on 8th Street. Last week." "There was no robbery on 8th Street last week," Terrell said flatly. "We pulled the dispatch logs for the last 30 days. No robberies reported in that sector." "Must have been a radio call," Higgins lied. Terrell tapped a key on his laptop. He spun the screen around. "This is the footage from your body camera," Terrell said. "And this," he pointed to another window on the screen, "is the footage from the surveillance team that was watching me." On the screen, the diner scene played out. "Now," Terrell said, leaning forward, "here is the twist, Brock. And it's the reason you're sitting in that chair and not just getting a slap on the wrist for being a racist jerk." Terrell paused for effect. "I wasn't in that diner to catch Dante Ricci for racketeering," Terrell revealed. "Well, not just for that." Higgins frowned. "What are you talking about?" "We've been investigating the Moretti crime family for 3 years, Terrell explained. "And for 3 years, every time we got close to a key member, they slipped away. Every time we set up a buy, a patrol car would coincidentally show up and spook them. Every time we planned a raid, the location was clean." Higgins stopped bouncing his leg. "We realized," Terrell continued, his voice dropping lower, "that the Morettis had a guardian angel, someone inside the 12th precinct, someone who would create diversions, someone who would accidentally bust up federal operations to let the targets escape." Higgins' face went grey. "We set up the meet at the diner today, not to catch Ricci," Terrell said, delivering the blow. "But to catch you?" Higgins slammed his hand on the table. "That's a lie. I didn't know Ricci was there. I just saw a bum in a booth." "Did you?" Terrell pointed to the screen. "Let's watch the tape again. 10:14 a.m. You enter. You look at me. You look at the window. You see Ricci's Mercedes approaching. You don't look surprised. You look at your watch. And then, immediately, you engage me. Coincidence, is it?" Terrell pulled a piece of paper from the file. "We subpoenaed your bank records, Brock. Cayman Islands? Really? It's a bit cliché, isn't it?" Higgins stopped breathing. "Shell company Blue Shield Consulting receives monthly deposits of $5,000, Terrell read. "Deposits originating from a construction firm owned by the Moretti family. You can't prove that's me," Higgins whispered. "We have the IP logs used to access the account," Terrell said. "They trace back to your home Wi-Fi. And your phone." Terrell closed the file. The sound was like a gunshot in the small room. "You aren't just a bad cop, Higgins. You're a mole. You work for the mob. And today, you were so eager to protect your payroll that you arrested a federal agent on camera, assaulted him, and tried to steal $50,000 of marked federal funds." Terrell stood up and walked to the door. He put his hand on the handle and looked back. "I told you outside," Terrell said. "I'm the guy who is going to ruin your life. But honestly, Brock, you ruined it yourself. The charges are racketeering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, assault on a federal officer, and deprivation of rights under color of law. You're looking at 30 years. Minimum." Higgins sat slumped in the chair, the fight completely drained out of him. The arrogant bully who had walked into the diner was gone. All that was left was a criminal who had just realized he had been playing checkers while the FBI was playing 4D chess. Terrell opened the door. "Agent O'Malley, he's all yours. Process him." As Terrell walked out of the interrogation room, the bullpen was silent. The other officers, including the rookie Klein, watched him pass. There was no hostility in their eyes anymore, only fear and a dawning realization that the culture of their precinct was about to be burned to the ground. But the story wasn't over. As Terrell reached the lobby, ASAC Reynolds was waiting for him. "Good work in there," Reynolds said. "Higgins is the first domino, but he's not the last." "I know," Terrell said, looking back at the precinct. "He was too comfortable. He didn't act alone. The sergeant at the desk? He let it happen. The captain? He's been looking the other way for years." "We have warrants for the captain's office and home," Reynolds said. "We're tearing this place apart." "What about the rookie?" Terrell asked. "Klein." "She's green," Reynolds said. "But she was complicit. She stood by." "She was scared," Terrell corrected. "But fear isn't an excuse. Bring her in for questioning. If she flips on the captain, maybe we cut her a deal. If she protects the blue wall, she goes down with the ship." Terrell walked out into the rain. The air felt cleaner now. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the dull ache in his shoulder where Higgins had twisted it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He had a missed call. It was from Dante Ricci. Terrell stared at the screen. Why would the target be calling him? He answered. "Yeah?" "T-Bone." Ricci's voice was smooth, amused. "Or should I say, Agent Bishop?" Terrell froze on the steps of the precinct. "Ricci." "I saw the show at the diner," Ricci laughed. "Very dramatic. I assume Higgins is in cuffs?" "He is." "Good," Ricci said. He was getting greedy, asking for a raise. "I figured it was cheaper to let you guys take out the trash for me." The blood ran cold in Terrell's veins. "You set him up," Terrell realized. "You knew I was a Fed." "I suspected," Ricci said. "So I sent Higgins in to test the waters. If he arrested you, I knew you were nobody. If the FBI swarmed the place, well, then I knew you were the real deal. Thanks for the confirmation, Agent. Now I know who to avoid." The line went dead. Terrell lowered the phone. The rain soaked his face. The twist wasn't just that Higgins was dirty. The twist was that the mobster had played them all. Ricci had sacrificed his own mole just to confirm Terrell's identity. Terrell looked at the phone, then back at the precinct where the FBI was hauling out boxes of evidence. "Reynolds!" Terrell shouted, turning back. "We have a problem." The rain had stopped, but the atmosphere inside the FBI Mobile Command Center was electric. The screens on the wall displayed a web of connections, bank accounts, phone records, and surveillance photos. At the center of it all was Dante Ricci's face. Terrell sat on a folding chair, an ice pack pressed against his shoulder. He was replaying the phone call in his head. "I figured it was cheaper to let you guys take out the trash for me." "He played us, Reynolds," Terrell said, his voice low. Ricci knew Higgins was a liability. He knew Higgins was getting sloppy, greedy. So he used me as the executioner. We didn't catch a break. We caught a discard. ASAC Reynolds nodded grimly. "We got a dirty cop off the street. That's a win. But Ricci is in the wind." "Not yet," Terrell said. "Ricci is arrogant. He called me to gloat. That means he feels safe. He thinks he has time. Meanwhile, in the holding cell of the 12th precinct, the reality of hard karma was crashing down on Brock Higgins. The cell was cold. His belt and shoelaces had been taken. The man who had walked around the precinct like a king just 2 hours ago was now huddled in the corner, listening to the murmurs of the federal agents tearing his desk apart outside. The heavy steel door buzzed open. Higgins looked up, hope flashing in his eyes. "My lawyer. Is my lawyer here?" A man in a sharp, expensive suit walked in. It wasn't the police union rep Higgins expected. It was Arthur Sterling, a high-priced criminal defense attorney known for representing legitimate businessmen like the Moretti family. "Mr. Sterling," Higgins scrambled to his feet. "Thank God, you got to get me out of here. The feds, they have the bank records. They know about the payments." Sterling didn't sit down. He stood by the bars, looking at Higgins with the same expression one might use when looking at a dead rat. "Sit down, Brock," Sterling said smoothly. "I can't sit down. I'm looking at 30 years, Higgins shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "You need to call Ricci. Tell him I kept my mouth shut. Tell him I need bail money. I need the family to step up." Sterling sighed and checked his gold watch. "The family is stepping up, Brock. They are paying for my time right now to come here and give you a very specific message." "What message?" "The message is, goodbye." Higgins froze. "What?" "You became a liability," Sterling said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You drew too much attention. You harassed civilians. You got sloppy with the deposits. And today, attacking a federal agent on camera? That is bad for business. Mr. Ricci has no use for a soldier who can't follow orders." "I did it for him," Higgins screamed. "I protected him for 3 years." "And you were paid," Sterling countered. "The transaction is complete. You are on your own, Brock. If you talk, if you mention Mr. Ricci's name to the feds, well, you know the reach of the family. Prisons are dangerous places. Accidents happen in the showers every day." Sterling turned to leave. "Wait, you can't leave me," Higgins wailed, grabbing the bars. "Don't call us, Mr. Higgins," Sterling said, the door buzzing open for him. "We certainly won't be calling you." The door slammed shut. Higgins stood in the silence. The weight of it crushed him. He had sold his badge, his honor, and his country for money, thinking he was part of the family. Now he realized he was just a tool, a disposable pawn. The anger that rose in him wasn't the hot rage of a bully anymore. It was the cold, desperate fury of a man with nothing left to lose. "Guard!" Higgins screamed, his voice cracking. "Get me Bishop! Get me the agent!" Terrell walked back into the interrogation room. This time he didn't bring a file. He brought a cup of coffee and placed it on the table. Higgins looked like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. He was trembling. "You were right," Higgins whispered, staring at the coffee. "They cut me loose. Sterling came. He threatened me." "I told you," Terrell said, sitting down. "To them you're just the trash. So are you going to let them flush you? Or are you going to be a cop for one last time in your miserable life?" Higgins looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I want a deal. Witness protection. For me and my wife." "I can't promise Witzek," Terrell said honestly. "But I can promise that if you give me Ricci right now, I will speak to the U.S. attorney. I will tell them you cooperated. It could knock 10 years off your sentence. And we will put you in a federal facility where the Morettis can't touch you." Higgins swallowed hard. He nodded. "He's leaving," Higgins said. "Tonight. He has a private hangar at the Northeast Philadelphia airport. Hangar 4B. Terrell's eyes narrowed. "What time?" "Flight plan is filed for 11:30 p.m. He's going to Montenegro. Non-extradition." Terrell checked his watch. It was 10:45 p.m. "You better be right, Brock," Terrell said, standing up. "Because if we go there and the hangar is empty, I'm putting you in general population at Rikers." "It's real," Higgins said. "It's a Gulfstream G-50, tail number N774RF. He keeps his emergency reserves there. Gold. Cash. He's clearing out." Terrell burst out of the room. "Reynolds, gear up! We're going to the airfield!" The convoy of FBI Suburbans tore down I-95, lights and sirens cutting through the night. "Status!" Terrell shouted into his radio as he drove. "Air traffic control confirms a flight plan filed for a Gulfstream G650, departing 23:30 for Podgorica." O'Malley's voice came over the comms. It's on the tarmac now. Engines are spooling up. Block the runway, Reynolds ordered from the lead vehicle. Do not let that bird fly. They crashed through the chain-link perimeter fence of the private airfield, tires screeching on the asphalt. In the distance, under the harsh glare of floodlights, the sleek white jet was already moving. The whine of its turbines was a deafening scream. "He's taxiing!" Terrell yelled. "Intercept! Intercept!" The FBI vehicles fanned out, racing parallel to the jet. The plane was huge, and it was gaining speed. Terrell saw the door of the hangar. It was open. Several black SUVs were parked there, abandoned. Ricci was already on board. "This is the FBI!" Reynolds' voice boomed over the PA system of the lead truck. "Cut your engines! Now!" The pilot ignored the command. The jet accelerated. "He's going to take off!" O'Malley shouted. "Not today!" Terrell gritted his teeth. Terrell swerved his SUV, braking formation. He drove straight onto the runway, directly into the path of the oncoming jet. "Bishop, what are you doing?" Reynolds screamed over the radio. "Get out of the way!" "He won't hit me," Terrell said, gripping the wheel. "He needs the lift speed. If he hits me, he crashes and burns." It was a game of chicken. A 3-ton SUV versus a 30-ton jet. The jet roared closer. The lights were blinding. The noise was earth-shattering. 50 yards, 30 yards, 10 yards. At the last possible second, the jet's nose dipped. The pilot slammed the reverse thrusters and hammered the brakes. The tires smoked and screeched, leaving long black skid marks on the tarmac. The plane swerved violently to the right, its wingtip missing Terrell's SUV by inches before the landing gear collapsed. The jet skidded off the runway and plowed into the muddy grass, coming to a halt with a groan of twisting metal. Silence fell over the airfield for a heartbeat. Then the doors of the FBI vehicles flew open. "Move! Move! Move!" Terrell was the first one out, weapon drawn. He sprinted across the wet grass toward the crippled jet. The emergency slide hadn't deployed. The main door was jammed. "Open it!" Terrell yelled to the SWAT team. A breach charge was slapped onto the door. Boom! The door fell away. Terrell and the team stormed the plane. Inside, the cabin was pure luxury. Leather seats, crystal decanters, gold trim. But it was chaos. Luggage had flown everywhere. At the back of the cabin, Dante Ricci was trying to scramble out of an emergency exit, clutching a briefcase. He looked back, his eyes wide with shock. He wasn't the smooth, arrogant voice on the phone anymore. He was a trapped rat. "Don't move!" Terrell aimed his Glock at Ricci's chest. Ricci froze. He looked at the gun, then at the briefcase, then at Terrell. "You're making a mistake, Agent," Ricci panted, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "There's $5 million in this case. It's yours. Just let me walk. Nobody has to know." Terrell stepped forward, his boots crunching on broken glass. "You think this is about money?" Terrell asked, his voice steady. "This is about the oath. Something you and Higgins never understood." $5 million, Ricci pleaded. 10, I have accounts." "You have the right to remain silent," Terrell said, grabbing Ricci by the lapels of his expensive Italian suit and slamming him against the bulkhead. "I suggest you start practicing." As the SWAT team cuffed Ricci and dragged him off the plane, Terrell spotted something on the floor. It was Ricci's phone. Terrell picked it up. He saw a text message notification on the lock screen. It was from Arthur Sterling. Text: "The cop has been neutralized. He won't talk. Have a safe flight." Terrell smiled grimly. The lawyer had lied to Ricci too. There was no honor among thieves. The entire corrupt empire was built on lies, and tonight the truth had finally come to collect its debt. Terrell walked out of the plane and onto the tarmac. The cool night air hit his face. Reynolds was there, watching Ricci get shoved into a transport van. "Nice driving, Bishop," Reynolds said, though he looked like he wanted to strangle him. "You're crazy." "It worked," Terrell shrugged. "We got the books," O'Malley called out from the cargo hold of the plane. "Ledgers, hard drives, everything. This doesn't just take down Ricci. This takes down the whole East Coast operation." Terrell looked up at the sky. It was over, but he knew there was one last thing to do. He had to go back to the precinct. He had to look Higgins in the eye one last time. 6 months later, the holding cell in the basement of the James A. Byrne United States Courthouse smelled of bleach and old fear. For 20 years, Brock Higgins had been the one shoving men into cells like this. He had been the one laughing as the heavy steel doors clanged shut, making jokes about hotel accommodations and checkout times. Now he was the one sitting on the cold metal bench, his wrists chafed by the shackles that bound him to his waist. He looked at his reflection in the polished steel of the toilet unit. The man staring back was a stranger. He had lost 40 pounds. The ruddy, arrogant complexion of a cop who ate too many free donuts and drank too much confiscated beer was gone, replaced by the pasty, grey pallor of a man who hadn't seen direct sunlight in 180 days. Protective custody, solitary confinement, had hollowed him out. "Higgins," a U.S. Marshal barked, rapping his baton against the bars. "Showtime." Higgins stood up, his legs shaking. He shuffled forward, the chains clinking with a sound that seemed deafening in the silence. This was the hard karma he had laughed about when he was wearing the badge. Now, it was a physical weight dragging him toward judgment. Upstairs, Courtroom 9 was a pressure cooker. The air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against the body heat of 300 people. The press had dubbed it the Blue Shield trial, and it had become a national spectacle. Every seat was filled. Reporters with their laptops open, community activists, families of people Higgins had falsely arrested over the years, and a sea of grim-faced police officers in dress blues who had come to see the rot cut out of their department. In the front row, Special Agent Terrell Bishop sat straight as a rod. He wasn't wearing his undercover hoodie today. He was in his full dress uniform, his gold badge gleaming under the courtroom lights. Next to him sat Jessica Klein. She wasn't a rookie anymore. The fear that had defined her in the diner was gone, replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. She wore her uniform with a new kind of dignity, the kind that comes from choosing the hard truth over the easy lie. "All rise," the bailiff's voice boomed. The Honorable Judge Marcus Harrison swept into the room, his black robes billowing. Harrison was known as the Hammer, a federal judge who had zero patience for corruption. He took his seat, his eyes scanning the room before landing heavily on the defense table. There were 3 defendants, separated by empty chairs and armed marshals. On the left was Brock Higgins, looking like a ghost. On the right was Arthur Sterling, the high-priced lawyer who had tried to broker the deal. And in the center, an empty chair represented Dante Ricci. "We are here for sentencing," Judge Harrison said, his voice amplified by the microphone, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "The jury has spoken. The evidence is irrefutable. Now, it is time to balance the scales." The prosecution stood first. The U.S. attorney, a sharp woman named Eleanor Vance, didn't mince words. "Your Honor," she began, pointing a finger at Higgins. "This man didn't just break the law. He wore the law as a disguise. He turned the badge of the Philadelphia Police Department into a license to steal, intimidate, and destroy. He kidnapped a federal agent. He conspired with organized crime. He betrayed every citizen who ever called 911 expecting help. The government requests the maximum sentence." She turned to Arthur Sterling. "And Mr. Sterling, a man sworn to uphold the Constitution, who instead used his law license to launder blood money for the Moretti crime family. He attempted to sell out his own client to save his own skin, a level of cowardice that is frankly breathtaking." Sterling tried to stand, his face red. "Your Honor, I was coerced. I was acting under duress from Mr. Ricci." "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Judge Harrison snapped. "The court has read the transcripts of your text messages. You weren't coerced. You were negotiating a commission." The courtroom erupted in laughter, but it was a dark, angry sound. Sterling sank back into his chair, defeated. The judge turned his attention to Higgins. "Mr. Higgins, before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say?" Higgins stood up slowly. The marshals held his arms. He looked around the room. He saw the faces of the people he had hurt. He saw the other cops looking at him with disgust. Finally, his eyes locked on Terrell Bishop. 6 months ago, Higgins had sneered at Tyrrell, calling him a bum, twisting his arm, laughing at his claims of being an agent. Now, Tyrrell was the only man in the room looking at him with anything approaching understanding. Not pity, understanding. Higgins's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I thought I was part of something. The Brotherhood. I thought if I protected the guys with money, they'd protect me. I was wrong. I sold my soul for a monthly envelope. He looked down at the table. I'm sorry. That's all. I'm just sorry. It was the first honest thing Brock Higgins had said in 10 years. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. He adjusted his glasses and picked up a sheaf of papers. Mr. Higgins, your apology is noted. But apologies do not restore the years stolen from the innocent men you framed. Apologies do not rebuild the trust this city has lost in its police force. You wanted to play the big man on the street. You wanted to be above the law. The judge leaned forward, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. Well, Mr. Higgins, the law has a very long memory. On the charges of racketeering, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, assault on a federal officer, and deprivation of civil rights under color of law, I sentence you to 25 years in a federal correctional institution. A gasp sucked the air out of the room. Higgins's knees buckled. 25 years. He would be nearly 70 years old when he walked out. His life was effectively over. Furthermore, the judge continued, relentless, you are stripped of your pension. Your assets, including the home purchased with illicit funds, are seized. You leave this courtroom with nothing but the jumpsuit on your back. The judge then turned to Sterling. Arthur Sterling, for your role as the architect of this money-laundering scheme, you are sentenced to 15 years and permanently disbarred. The Bar Association has already been notified. And finally, the judge looked at the empty chair. Dante Ricci. Though he is not present, let the record show he has entered a guilty plea to avoid the death penalty. He has been transferred this morning to ADX Florence, the Supermax in Colorado. He will spend the rest of his natural life in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. His empire is dismantled. His assets are frozen. The Moretti family is finished. The gavel came down. Bang! The sound echoed like a thunderclap, signaling the end of an era. As the marshals hauled Higgins away, he didn't fight. He didn't scream. He looked broken. As he passed the railing where the agent sat, he stopped for a split second. He looked at Tyrrell. You were right, Higgins whispered, his voice raspy. 7 minutes, that's all it took. Tyrrell nodded. Goodbye, Brock. Higgins was dragged out the side door, the chains rattling a final, mournful tune. Outside the courthouse, the scene was chaotic. News helicopters hovered overhead. A crush of reporters pushed against the barricades. Tyrrell and Klein walked out together, squinting in the bright afternoon sun. You okay? Tyrrell asked, glancing at the young officer. Klein took a deep breath of the fresh air. I testified against a fellow officer. Half the department probably hates me. The dirty half hates you, Tyrrell corrected her. The good half. They respect you. You just saved them from working alongside a criminal. That's what real police work is. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was a plain white card with the Department of Justice seal. I spoke to Isaac Reynolds, Tyrrell said. The FBI is looking for liaisons for the Joint Task Force on organized crime. We need people who know the streets but won't be corrupted by them. People who pass the test. Klein took the card, her eyes widening. You want me to work with the feds? I want you to keep doing what you did in that interrogation room, Tyrrell smiled. Think about it. He walked down the steps toward the waiting press. The reporters started shouting questions immediately. Agent Bishop, do you feel justice was served? Agent Bishop, is it true you baited Higgins on purpose? Tyrrell stepped up to the thicket of microphones. He raised a hand and the crowd quieted. He looked directly into the lens of the primary news camera, his expression serious. Justice isn't a feeling, Tyrrell said, his voice steady and projecting authority. It's an action. Brock Higgins thought he could write his own rules because he carried a badge. Dante Ricci thought he could buy his way out of trouble because he had millions. Arthur Sterling thought he could outsmart the system because he had a law degree. Tyrell paused, letting the silence hang heavy for a moment. They were all wrong. Today proves that there is no shadow dark enough to hide in. You can run, you can lie, and you can intimidate. But eventually, the bill comes due. And when the FBI knocks on your door, it's usually too late to ask for a refund. He stepped back from the podium, ignoring the follow-up questions. He adjusted his jacket, feeling the weight of the file in his pocket. The next case, the next target. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah O'Malley. Text: "The wire is up on the South Philly docks. The cartel is moving the shipment tonight. We need a point man." Tyrell typed back, "On my way." He looked across the street at the diner where it had all started. Mickey's was bustling. People were laughing, eating, living their lives, completely unaware of the darkness that had almost consumed their neighborhood. That was the job, to stand in the gap, to be the shadow that hunts the wolves. Tyrell Bishop turned up his collar against the wind and walked away, disappearing into the rhythm of the city, ready for the next 7 minutes that would change someone's life forever. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Brock Higgins. He went from being the bully of the precinct to a number in the federal system, all because he underestimated the quiet man in Booth 4. It's a brutal lesson in hard karma. Higgins lost his badge, his freedom, and his legacy, while the rookie he tried to corrupt, Officer Klein, ended up being the hero who saved the department's honor. It really makes you think, how many times do we judge a book by its cover? Higgins saw a hoodie and saw a criminal. He didn't see the man who had the power to end his career in 7 minutes flat. I want to know what you think. Was 25 years enough for Higgins, or did he deserve more for betraying the public trust? And what about the lawyer, Sterling? Did he get off too easy? Let me know your verdict in the comments down below. I read every single one, and I love seeing your debates. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of justice, twists and karma, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who love these stories. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. We have a crazy story coming next week involving a cheating spouse and a hidden microphone that you do not want to miss. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember, be careful who you mess with. You never know who's watching.